You grew up in New York, yeah?
I didn't.
You didn't,
I
no.
grew up in a small town in northern Michigan.
But Nate did as well, and you grew up in New York.
No, Nate grew up in Phoenix. I grew up in New Jersey.
Ah, okay.
But I grew up
you
in
originated pretty much in New York
I went
as a
to
band.
high school there. And,
yeah.
And then the band, any writing and recording and at least initial formative moments we spent together were either in New York City or 15 miles outside of my parents' house.
So how much of New York has influenced your music, or would you say it hasn't at all?
I would say a great deal, whether it's seeing Broadway performances or being influenced by bands like The Strokes or jazz singers or whatever. Like a lot of it creeps in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Some nights even on a visual and on like a vibe level really kind of has this like out at night in certain parts of New York meets like Woody Allen's vision of New York from a lot of the aesthetic of movies like Manhattan or Annie Hall. Those were big buzz points for us when making the album.
Two absolutely amazing movies as well.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's been an absolute whirlwind since February, since the album was released. How have you taken that in, like how big it's actually gotten? I think the single is like the second biggest selling single in this country, which is amazing this year.
It's totally crazy, and it actually is, truthfully, it might sound a little cliche, but it's hard to take in.
Yeah.
Because the single has gotten so much bigger than is really fathomable.
Yeah.
And at some point, I think to do our jobs well and to just stay a part of it and not get weird, I think you kind of have to let go, focus on the shows, focus on if there's 500 people in front of us or 10,000, because that's really it. But anytime that I've personally tried, I'm sure Andrew would agree, to like sit back and think about the magnitude, it's just like, it's like thinking about space.
Yeah.
It like hurts.
Right. It's like imagining, the number of leaves on a tree, man.
Yeah. Or like imagine like another
We're getting
color,
deep.
bro.
We're getting deep, guys.
This is like some NYU freshman kind of stuff.
Yeah, and long may it continue as well. What's the weirdest thing that's happened over the last 8 months then? What would you say is the moment that you just went, oh my God?
I would say hearing Train cover one of our songs is a little surreal.
That's definitely a weird one. For me, we were at a bizarre event in the south of France, and I heard someone say, "I miss fat Karl Lagerfeld," and they said it about 3 feet from Karl Lagerfeld. So that's the kind of thing that didn't happen before.
Before, obviously, yeah.
Which, although humorous, is indicative of a lot of bizarre things that we've been through.
Yeah. And what about the name Fun? Where did it come from? Or was it just kind of like, you know what? We want our music to be that. And that is what you put the name of the band as.
I wish we had a more interesting story for this. Because the Beatles have The Man in the Flaming Pie, which is an obvious lie.
They probably, exactly. I was going to say most bands say,
right,
this happened.
Right,
elaborate story, but I made it up.
Well, the truth is, I mean, for the sake of interviews, we should think of an elaborate story. But at the heart of what happened is something that...
It made my job easier.
Make your job easier. But the truth is, it was great the way it worked out, because we didn't want a flashy name.
Yeah.
We didn't want a name that was like, this is the band name and this is the band. We wanted the band name to, just like our favorite bands, Wilco or Spoon. Or
it's secondary to the music.
It's like the band and the music and the attitude and the photos and the live show define the name rather than vice versa. So that was the intention with Fun. Yeah. And the period just helped at the end of the day.
Yeah. And you've done some collaborations with Janelle Monáe, of course. Do you want to do any more in the future? Who would you love to work with?
I think there's a ton of people we would love to work with. It's a really exciting time for music today with Kanye West making music, Drake making great music. I even think, like Florence and the Machine is doing something different.
Incredible.
Like there's so many artists that are doing things that we have a lot of respect for. We're pretty much open to anything, but at the same time, it's also nice to like be in this unique moment with ourselves. And like, there's really no one I would rather collaborate with at the moment than like Jack and Nate. I think we've got a really strong thing going.
Sweetheart, isn't he? How do you think when you hear he's like, yeah, we're best friends?
Yeah, so really all the above. Like it's a wonderful time. We're very much like alive with this kind of moment of inspiration, and we just kind of want to ride it out and embrace it.
Yeah. And what about We Are Young? Who wrote that out of the band?
Nate wrote that song, I think, like driving in his car.
And do you know where the story came from? Was it true? Was it?
The story came from, well, I think it's obviously like a pretty broad story about having friends that will take care of you, and but I mean, he speaks about one night specifically, which I remember too, which was sort of a devastating mess of drunken behavior. And
are a lot of the songs that are written by you guys, taken from experiences that you've had, or would they be, obviously you have to be exaggerated for music, but would you have a personal investment in them?
Yeah. Sorry.
Finishing each other's sentences?
Finishing up each other's sandwiches. There's a great deal of...
Do you want to go into that? What happened? Who ate whose sandwich?
I pretty much will eat whatever Jack leaves.
Even if he's not finished?
No, he's a sweetheart, remember?
Oh yeah, he's a sweetheart.
Yeah, there's a lot of personal investment. I think you have to only carry that to a certain point, though, and there has to be some sort of what's the phrase, like artistic license or something.
Yeah. Well, you want people, which I think is what you're touching on, to also be able to run with it. You get too specifically. You think about like the Mountain Goats, or it's one of my favorite lyricists, where it's very much Ani DeFranco or Conor Oberst. It's such specific stories that it's like you're just listening to these stories and you're not internalizing them in the way that someone like Paul McCartney sometimes can write a song like In My Life, which is everyone's song.
Yeah.
I'm sure he wrote it about someone very specific or a group of people.
But a lot of people can relate to it.
It's open enough that it's become all of our songs. And I think that's, we're striving for that more than anything else.
I think We Are Young totally did that. It was an anthem pretty much for the summer for a lot of people, I think. And it just kind of ran throughout, especially in the iTunes charts, which is great for you guys.
It was a huge surprise and something we didn't ever expect or even kind of dare to hope for anymore. It was really nice.
And you've been through a lot of members, through touring and all that. Has it kind of been about finding your shape as a band for the last few years?
Definitely. The touring lineup is really interesting because they all bring such unique things to the live show, and I think now we have a lineup that we're really, really happy with. But things change over time. The songs change and personalities shift, and there's so many factors when you're in a van or a bus or a plane or a ferry or whatever. It's just not always easy to keep the same people around for whatever reason. But fortunately, we've been able to work with a lot of our friends, and this is a great time.
And obviously, the first album came out, and the second album came out, obviously, but there wasn't as much expectation because, not as many people might have known about it. And then the second album came out, made an earthquake. The third album, are you nervous about bringing it out? How are you going to do it? Are you going to pace it, or, try throw it out as soon as you can because of the buzz that has been created about you guys?
We're definitely not going to throw it out. I think that the way to answer all the questions within that question is that everything that's happened for us has been on the basis of us being ourselves.
Yeah. So
we got big off of a song that was just the kind of song that we would write and perform. It didn't sound like anything else, We had a successful album by taking our time and making the right album. So I think we learned all the right lessons. If we compromised something in this process and had all this success, that would be a really hard one to justify and to figure out moving forward. But luckily, if we want to sort of stay the course, then our best bet would be to continue to just follow whatever artistic notion we have. And
do what you do, and it's all about the music with you guys, which is great. So thanks a million for talking to TuTube, and good luck in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah.